I've told you in the last few weeks of kind of a journey that I've been having for a while. I have really been, I was a wreck 20 years ago, and been just doing the best I can. When I wrote Being George Washington, that really came from a place to where I was feeling inside be George Washington. I don't even know what that, I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And I have had a really difficult time trying to be a better man every day. And it's tough because there's not a lot of role models out there. There's not a lot of people. I'm fortunate enough to know some amazing people that I can look up to and watch. But here recently, I had some things happen in my life, and at that particular time, just when I was most vulnerable, I find this book. This is the Book of Manly Men. I started reading this, and it is the best book on being a man I've ever read, and I've read a lot of them, and most of them are crap. Stephen Mansfield, he is the author of Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, and I hope this is one of many times that
I hope so.
We will have you on. But I guess I want to start with, do you agree with, I mean, obviously you do. There is a massive shortage of even knowing what a man is supposed to be in today's world.
There's no question. I mean, I actually wrote the book. Everybody knows that manhood's in crisis in our generation, but I do a lot on the college campuses, and when the millennials, the 20-somethings, turned to me, young men, and said, well, okay, we understand that manhood's in crisis, but what do you do? What do you do? It kind of put me in a crisis. Okay, these guys don't even have a roadmap. They don't have any examples. I mean, they can watch John Wayne movies and hope for some kind of a download, but they don't have a roadmap. So I was sort of challenged to stop my griping and start putting something in place that would actually help them find some vision for manhood.
There are two movies that, to me, that have touched me strangely. First is The Lone Survivor, which a good friend of mine is Marcus Luttrell. And I happened to be watching it with him about 2 months ago. I couldn't speak for, I bet it was 45 minutes, really literally. I had to write something out to him and give it to him because it affected me so profoundly. But it was because of his honor, the way he handled that movie. And I just, with my son, watched The Magnificent Seven just the other day. And I'm watching that with my son, and all the way through I'm like, that's a man.
That's a man. Yeah.
That's a man. But we're not encouraged to be that man.
Right.
Ever.
Right. And it's unfortunate, in a sense, that you have to go to a movie and sit with your son and say, okay, there's manhood, and rather than there being more open examples. And so hopefully we can change that.
Okay, so tell me what is a man?
The most fundamental definition of what a man is a man who does the things he's made for, the man who does his duty, bears his responsibilities. It's simply being what you're made for. And that means recognizing that you are not here to live out your lusts, your drives primarily, what you are here for is to own the responsibilities that a man has in this life. And your own fulfillment and your own joy and your own sense of place in the universe will come out of that owning of responsibility.
My grandmother said to me, I'll never forget, I got a divorce from my first wife, and I called up my grandmother and I told her, and she actually hung up on me. And it was towards the end of her life, and it crushed me. And she said, how dare you? And I said, excuse me? And she said, let me ask you a question. Do you think your grandfather and I liked each other all those years?
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah. She said, we loved each other, but we didn't always like each other.
Right.
She said, but we made a pact, we made an agreement, and we stuck to it.
Yeah.
Shame on you, and hung up the phone. And I was just blown away. Nobody does that.
No.
Nobody does that.
But look what was inherent in her words. Look, It doesn't feel good. It's not happy every day. But we made a covenant. We made an agreement. And we have obligations to fulfill. Now, all the happiness that they had in that marriage came out of fulfilling those obligations first. And we turn it around. We want the pleasures, the happiness, the joys, and we're shocked by anything that's difficult. And that's the reverse of manhood.
So I said on the air today, because we just did a show yesterday where we had 13 things that successful people have in their lives. And they're all self-evident. They're all self-evident. I think we are entering a time that I'm just beginning to understand now, where the founder said, we find these truths to be self-evident. We're no longer going to be arguing over things like, universal health care. We're arguing over basic eternal truths. Water makes you wet. Fire burns.
That's right.
And it's amazing. All you have to do is say it, and people say, that's right.
And in the context of this book, just the fact we're asserting there's a difference between men and women, not there's anything self-evident on the planet, it's that. But just the fact that we're asserting there's not only a physical difference, but an emotional difference between men and women, a role difference between men and women, that's radical in our time.
Okay, Tiffany, my executive producer, being a woman, and a short woman, I might say, just because...
Necessary.
All right. She said to me, okay, well, so what does it mean? Does that mean that I have to stay at home? Does that mean I have to be... And I said, why does me being a man have anything to do with you?
Well, and the answer is because what's passed for manhood has usually been so insecure that it oppressed women, that a man who just insists that his wife be barefoot pregnant in the kitchen is not much of a man. If he's a real man, he's happy for her to be everything she's made to be. So once women understand what we're trying to do here, especially in this book, I address women directly and say, look, the best thing that can happen for you is for men to be this kind of men. For manhood of this kind to arise in society. You'll be protected, cared for, and fully supported as you become everything you're meant to be. So your producer should be really happy about what we're doing.
All right, so tell me, because of before I get to the four axioms, I want to, I think it's actually the first one, about doing things. The thing I liked about this was, you talk about that men don't sit around and talk all the time.
Yeah.
So self-evident. Explain this.
Well, you know the jokes about how many words a woman speaks a day and how many words a man speaks a day, but the bottom line is that men absorb things non-verbally. Men, when they're pushed towards the feminine, which is it's great to be feminine if you're a woman, but if you're a man, that's pushing you in the wrong direction. What happens is you start replacing action with talking. You sit around and talk a lot. And we had this great men's movement years ago in this country, largely in the Christian churches and so on. And it was sort of boomer-oriented and sort of therapeutic, and it was wonderful at the time, but it descended for a lot of people into a lot of talk about a lot of stuff without a lot of doing. And again, these millennials, these 20-somethings, said, just tell me what to do. I know I'm screwed up. Just tell me what to do. And that's when I began to realize we have talked this thing to death. We've got books. We've got conversation. I make the joke in there that we replaced doing with just talking it to death.
And that is the problem. Because there are so few examples of it. When we did Being George Washington, we listed all these things that George Washington, that I thought embodied him. And he made that little book. I don't know if you've ever seen that little book, he and Ben Franklin.
Yes.
Checklist every single day.
Yes.
And there were things like, he had, don't spit in fires. Well, I got that one down. But we don't have any framework around it. So when you're starting from scratch, you really are saying, I don't know, because we threw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know what's good and what's bad here.
Well, and as you very well know, that's why George Washington is sitting there saying, don't greet a lady in this way. Empty your mouth of food before you do this. Don't raise your feet up on the wall when you're at the tavern. He was unfathered. His father died early, and so as a result, he's trying to rebuild an understanding of manhood he's never been taught.
Boy, I never thought of that, because I was just going to ask you, one of the producers said, my father died young. I know my father worked all the time, and so I had an example. I have worked down because that's what I saw my father do. I saw my father treat people with respect, and so I have that down. But I don't know how to be a dad, or how to be, I have my Christmas party tomorrow. I'm the worst at parties because we worked. And I worked my whole life.
Sure.
So I'm very awkward in social situations, one-on-one, etc. And I've been looking for, okay, well, how do I do it? And that first, just do it, says you're not going to find any of that.
Right. The story that I like the most in there, and that I think you probably share, is where I quote the Andy Griffith Show, and essentially Andy's out of town. The two deputies are recognizing that there's a bank robbery going on in town, and they say, we got to call the police. And one turns to the other and says, we are the police. There's no Superman who's going to swoop through most guys' lives and teach them how to do what they need to do. We're going to have to build a culture of men who say, look, I'm screwed up, you're messed up. We didn't have fathers who taught us these things. Let's start helping each other become the men we're called to be.
Okay, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men. Available in bookstores everywhere. Back in just a second.